Hey friends, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into how to do keyword research for your directory. Now, today's video builds on the last video where we went over how to review your niche at a high level to figure out whether or not it makes sense to build a directory in a particular niche. So if you have not watched that video yet, I'd recommend going back, checking that out. We go over 5 key questions that you need to ask yourself, and that will really set you up to take big action in this video today. Now, in today's video, we're not looking at things at a high level anymore. Now we're really going to get into the weeds of it. And one of the most important foundation setting pieces in getting your directory up and running is doing keyword research. Okay, so why is it important to do keyword research when building a directory? Now, when people build directories, one of the things that I see a lot, and I've been in this position myself, is that you kind of get your idea at a high level. You might even do some like high level research into, what the industry is all about and what kind of competitors you have, but then you just jump straight into building. And the problem with that is that really you're setting up a directory without an understanding of how people actually search for things online. And what that ultimately leads to is that people simply don't discover your directory because people are not actually searching for information that is directly linked to your directory. And what keyword research allows you to do is to really dive into understanding what it is that people are actually searching for and what the phrases and words are that they are typing into Google or other search engines. As soon as you can figure out what it is that people are typing into Google, it will be a lot easier for you to then optimize your site around those search terms. That will then lead to you ranking higher in Google for those targeted search terms, and that ultimately leads to you just naturally driving more traffic to your site. Not just will it drive more traffic to your site, it will also drive the right type of audience to your site. So you'll be able to break down exactly what it is that people are actually trying to get out of their Google search, and you can then attract people who have higher intent. And ultimately, higher intent traffic leads to more conversions. Now, if you've never heard of keyword research before, do not worry. It is definitely not as complicated as people make it sound, but there are definitely some tools and some processes that you can learn that will make it so much easier for you to kind of figure out what it is that you should build, what kind of search terms you should optimize your site around. So here is what we're going to be covering today. First of all, we're going to be going over what keyword research is at a high level, and then we're going to dive straight into a real practical example where I'm going to be taking you through my step-by-step process of finding awesome keywords that we can set our site up around. I'm also going to show you how you can actually find out how many people are actually searching for certain types of keywords every single month, and how many other sites are competing for that same term by either spending money on ads or by creating content in that space. Then what we're going to do is go over how we decide what keywords we should focus on in order to get the best value for money when we are allocating our time and energy. And then I'm going to show you how identifying those keywords applies to building a directory, and then how you then build on top of that process over time. Now, this will be a super practical walkthrough, so even if you are a complete beginner, this one will be something that you'll be able to action straight after the video. Now, before we get into it, I do want to quickly let everyone know about a new course that I'm working on for my online community, the MBMP Labs. A lot of people reached out to me wanting to have more in-depth guides into building directory businesses with the no-code tools that I use to set up the running directory. And so right now, I am working on the local directory playbook, where I will walk you through the step-by-step process of building your own directory business with the same no-code tools that I use. Now, this is not available just yet, but you'll be able to get a high-level overview of some of the key topics that I'll be covering in this course. So I'll leave a link to the landing page down below. And if you are interested, you can simply join the waitlist. And as I get closer to releasing the course, I'll be emailing you with course previews, lesson previews, that type of stuff. Now, with all of that being said, we've got a lot to cover. So let's dive into what it is that we actually do when we do keyword research. So all of this really just starts off by thinking about what it is that your customers do when they are trying to solve a particular problem that your directory solves. Now, one of the main go-to ways is to simply look up online what it is that people have to say. So if, for example, someone is just wanting to, find a lawyer near them, typically what they'll Google is something like find an employment lawyer near me. And then what Google will do is it will look at all of the sites that have been indexed on the internet, and based on that, it will, for starters, show you a list of paid recommendations, so you can see all of your different sponsored ads. But then it will also show you organic search results, and so you'll be able to see that at the very top of Google, you'll have a list of recommendations that Google considers the most relevant option. Now, the goal of keyword research is to essentially identify what people are searching for and then to optimizing your website so that you can be at the very top spot in Google. So in short, if I had to break down the step-by-step process of doing keyword research, we start off by figuring out what it is that people are searching for that is relevant to what our directory will build. Then we want to figure out how many other people are searching for the exact same term or even search terms close to that. Then we want to review how competitive this search term is. So we essentially want to figure out how many people are spending money on search ads, how many people are creating content optimized for that particular keyword. Then, once we have a list of all of these keywords relevant to what we are doing, we essentially want to identify the lowest hanging fruit of keywords that we can target. And those keywords are typically keywords that have high search volume and low competition. Now, as soon as we have identified a list of the keywords that are high search volume and low competition, then what we can do is optimize our directory build. That means, the different pages that we build, the different structure of our folders and CMS setups, and then optimize for those keywords. And ultimately, we can then start ranking for those keywords, and then we just go and rinse and repeat that process for other keywords that we identify in the space. Okay, so now that we have our high-level strategy and what we do with keyword research out of the way, let's actually dive into a real practical example so I can show you some of the tools that I use and some of the processes that I go through. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to generate a list of keywords that we can research for search volume and competition. Now, where do we find these keywords? Now, there are 4 different ways that you can do it, and I'm going to walk you through each one. So the first one is to use auto-suggest to get recommendations by Google. So the first thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to put yourself into the position of, say, a customer and think about what it is that they would Google that would ultimately lead to your directory. So if I'm, for example, building a directory for running races in Canada, an example search that someone might make is something like looking for a 5K race near me. Now, what you'll see is as you're typing in your search query, Google will give you a bunch of recommendations or auto completions that you can use. Now, these auto completions are generated based on your location services being enabled. So it will know where I'm at, and based on that, prioritize, for example, Ottawa at the top. And then it will also prioritize auto completions based on what other people have searched for. And so a great starting point to assemble your list is to simply grab all of the auto suggestions that you get. And so you can go through the process of doing that for, say, 10K races and so on. And ultimately, once you do that, you'll be able to start investigating these individual keywords first for search volume and more. Now, the process that I recommend for saving all of that is, one, to either just save it in a doc, or what I like to do is I actually like to take screenshots of it and to then add it to ChatGPT so it can then basically analyze the keywords and then categorize them for me later on. Another place where you can find keywords is in the people also search for section. So if I type in 10K races near me, it will also show me what other people have searched for related to this. And so this is basically another set of keywords that you can then use to basically investigate it further. And as you're clicking into different keywords, you'll see that it will then provide more options, and all of these kind of recommendations are all related to each other, and they're all keywords worth investigating. Now, these are more traditional ways to build your list of potential keywords. Definitely something that you want to keep in mind, because it will allow you to really understand how people phrase their searches, which helps immensely in the content creation process. But there are actually two more ways that you can generate these keywords. The first way is to just use ChatGPT. And so what I like to do is I like to basically tell ChatGPT about my business and then to get it to generate a list of keywords. Now you can see here, I just wrote act as an SEO expert, generate a list of broad keyword ideas for running directory in Canada, break it down by different types of runners. Now, an important thing that I've done here is I've actually also specified that I want it to be broken down by different types of runners, because if you have a variety of customers that are going to use your directory, it's actually kind of helpful to understand how it is that different types of customers are going to use your site and what the key challenges that they are trying to solve for when they are Googling different things. And so you can see here, based on that, ChatGPT will basically come up with a list of recommendations for different types of keywords. And these are keywords that you can now use to go into the process of finding out whether or not a lot of people are searching for these terms. Now, I'm going to show you the fourth way of finding keywords in just a second, but what we're going to do next is dive into the next tool that we're going to use to basically figure out how many people are searching for these terms, and then also how many other people are competing for it. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to Google Ads, and they have a tool called Keyword Planner. Now, Keyword Planner is a free to use tool that Google provides their, the advertisers who are basically trying to plan their search campaigns, and they'll basically tell you how many people search for certain search terms or keywords every single month so that you can build your campaign around it. Now, this is a super useful tool. However, one thing that is important to keep in mind is that if you want accurate search volume, you are actually going to have an active account with them. Otherwise, they're just going to provide you a range. So you have a few options here. Option number one is just set up a campaign for something so that you spend $5 and then get access to the full search volume. Option two, there are a bunch of other paid tools out there that allow you to do this, and I'll leave a link on my blog with a few alternative options where you can basically get the same results. However, you're going to have to pay for it. Or option three, and this is something that I did a lot back in the days, you can actually just use a freelancing site to get someone to do this for you. It is usually costs like $5, and people go kind of in depth with all the different tools, and that way you get around having to spend any money on the tools itself, and you just get someone to do it for you. Now, the tool that we're going to look into first is the Get Search Volume and Forecast tool. So basically it says, hey, enter a bunch of keywords and I'll tell you how many people search for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in here, I'm going to grab all of these keywords and I'm just going to start pasting them in. So ideally you want to do this with as many keywords as possible, just so that you get a large amount of results. But this is something that you typically do once you have completed, your keyword research. So I'm just going to stop here, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on Get Started. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to look at all of the different keywords that I provided, and it's now going to tell me, how many people are searching for it. Now, a few key things that I want you to pay attention to. Make sure that if you're building a local directory, that the actual correct country is selected. Otherwise, it's going to give you data that basically might mislead you into thinking that there's a lot more search volume than there is. Now, because I'm building this for Canada, I'm just going to type in Canada. And one thing that you might notice, especially with longer tail keywords, is that the search volume that you actually get based on some of the keywords that you've identified is not particularly great. Now, this happens for multiple reasons. Number one, sometimes the keywords that were generated by ChatGPT just don't have any significant search volume because they're a bit too long and a bit too specific. And ultimately, sometimes the market is just simply too small in order to generate any meaningful search volume, which brings me to the fourth way that you can do keyword research, which is how I typically do it. Now, Google also has a tool called, Discover New Keywords. Basically, what you can do here is add some keywords as a starting point, and you can then use those keywords to basically generate new keywords based on, what Google finds. Now, this here has turned out to be hands down one of the best ways to generate new keywords. And the way that I typically approach it is just by adding up to 10 keywords at a time and seeing what other results are generated. So typically what you can do here is you can just go back into ChatGPT. Let's do that now quickly. And within that thread, just say, hey, generate a list of very broad keywords related to the running directory. And then what it will do is it will just start generating lists that are like keywords that are not as specific as this. And so you can see here, race finder, running events calendar, all those types of things. And oftentimes it will break it into different categories as well. And this is perfect as a starting point because now we can use these broad keywords to generate even more keyword ideas inside of our Google Ads Planner. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab some of those keywords. I'm just going to paste them in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply click on get results. So what it's going to do is it's going to investigate our keywords that we provided, as you can see here, but it's also going to give us a ton of other keywords that are related to this. And now you can see now we've got actual keyword volume that we can work with. Okay. So it generated 5,122 keyword ideas for us. And this is a lot better when it comes to actually now figuring out what kind of keywords we can work with. Now, just in case you have never seen this interface before, let me give you a quick little rundown of what it is that we're working with. So first of all, the first column has the actual keywords. So this is what people are typing into Google. The next column has the average monthly searches. So it's the total amount of searches that are made throughout the year divided by 12. Now, besides that, you're also going to have this graph. And what this graph represents is how the search volume changes on a month-by-month basis. So for example, you can see for, let's say, what's a good one to work with? Let's say the Vancouver Sun Run, you have a period where it starts off in February with, say, 10K search volume. In March, it has 12, and then it kind of spikes in April with 40.5K search volume, and then after that, it kind of dies down. Now, what this graph tells you is that this is a very seasonal keyword, and the reason for that is that the Vancouver Sun Run is actually a race, and so what you typically see with event-based directories is that there'll be certain times of the year where there'll basically be no search volume for certain kind of races, but then other times as an event gets closer and more people are kind of wanting to enter that kind of stuff, you'll see the search volume increase. And so now you can basically use a graph like that to kind of identify, how people typically engage with your industry over the course of a year. So a super useful thing to look at. Now, the 3-month change kind of indicates, over a shorter period of time, what direction it's trending in. And because, the Vancouver Sun Run's coming up, you can see that if you compare it to the last 3 months, there's just been a huge spike in searches for this particular search term. The year-on-year change, I think, is actually probably more interesting to look at because the year-on-year change basically shows you how the search volume has changed compared to last year. And obviously, if the search volume year-on-year is increasing, that's a very positive sign because that kind of shows you that more people are interested in that particular race. And if you then go through all of the other search terms, you can kind of see, what kind of areas are trending and which kind of, areas or searches are kind of declining a bit. Okay. And, with an events-based directory, it's going to be somewhat fairly consistent. But, if you're doing things in software or even something like a talent directory like the Unicorn Factory, you'll actually be able to use all these insights to really see what kind of industries or categories or services are actually growing in popularity and which ones are declining. And so then you can build your strategy around that. Now, the next column to talk about is competition. Now, this one here can be a little bit misleading because what people think this means sometimes is that if it says competition low, it's super easy to rank for it on Google. But that is not actually what this means. What this means is how competitive are ad placements for certain keywords. So let's say, for example, we want to run ads in the search network, or, that kind of stuff. How many other people are competing for that same keyword? And so in this case, it basically says low everywhere, but in certain industries and in certain locations, you'll actually see that it's relatively high. This, however, does not indicate how easy or how hard it is to rank for this particular keyword on Google. We're going to have to use a different tool for that. Then maybe the last thing worth talking about is top of page bid and top of page bid, the high end of the range, basically tells you that if you were to run ads, what would you roughly have to pay in order to get a click, being at the very top of Google. That's kind of what all this information says. Now, what we want to do with all of this information is we kind of want to recycle through all of the different keywords that we have generated, and we want to go ahead and basically save all of the keywords that we find so that we can then go ahead and dive even deeper into it. Now, the way I like to do it is, once again, I'll go in here, I'll go and get my keywords, and then what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and I'll click on download keyword ideas, and I'll save it to a Google Sheet. Now, typically what I like to do is just give it a name. So I'm just going to call it the running directory, and then I'll just basically say what the category is. So in this case, it's just listing keywords, or let's just say general. And what I'll do is I'll just put this in as general keywords, and then I'll just go ahead and download it. Now, all of this data here is now going to be saved in a Google Sheet for me, and that will then take us to the next step where we're going to start analyzing all of these search results. Now, this part here is really where the money's made, and this is the part that so many people skip, and then they end up blindly building all of these different pages for their directory only to basically get no traffic whatsoever. This process here is so easily replicated that I'm going to be walking you through it step by step, no matter how long it takes. And if you just follow this process, you'll know exactly how to structure your directory so that you can actually attract people based on what it is that they are searching. So before we dive into the nitty-gritty of it, just to catch you up, I have created 4 more Google Sheets with a whole bunch of different keywords that people are searching for. Diving more specifically into like things like location-based searches and those types of things. Now, by the time you're done finding all these keywords that you want to research, you're going to have a ton of them. So one tip that I do have is to potentially just move it into a database tool like Airtable, where you can organize the data a little bit better. So this is an Airtable template that I use to do all of my research. And if you want a copy for this, there is a link to this particular base that you can copy and paste in the blog post version of this video. So I'll leave a link down below, and you can just jump in, copy the base, and then kind of go from there. But what I do is I basically get all of the data from Google Sheets, and I just import it into Airtable, and that then generates a massive list of keywords for me that I can then more easily search and filter. Another thing that you can do with Airtable that is not easily done with Google Sheets is to hook it up to all sorts of automations. So the part that I'm going to show you next is going to be a somewhat manual way of doing this, but if you wanted to just do this at a massive scale, you can actually just hook it up to make.com and then allow your keywords to be categorized and analyzed based on your criteria. With that being said, we've now got 7,000 keywords that we need to kind of break down and understand what it is that people are searching for. So what I like to do is I like to jump into ChatGPT and to basically tell it about my keywords and to then get it to help me categorize them. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and we'll write a prompt, which is, you're an SEO expert and I need your help analyzing the following keywords. And so what I'm going to do now is I am just going to start feeding it keywords based on some of these searches that I made. Now, you can do this directly from inside of Airtable, or you can do it directly from inside of Google Sheets, whatever works best for you. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to feed it these keywords, maybe 100 at a time. So we'll just go ahead, we'll copy it, and then we'll just paste it in here. Now, the model that I recommend using for this is O3 mini high, simply because it will need to do a little bit of reasoning. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead, hit the enter button. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the remaining keywords so that I provide roughly 400 high quality keywords for it to analyze. And then we're going to move on to the next step, which is to then see how we can translate how it's categorized these keywords into a directory strategy. Now, once you've gone through the process of adding all of these keywords with the actual search volume, it will already start breaking it down for you. So it will basically already give you indications like, there's city specific opportunities and so on. And so as you feed it more and more information, it will kind of be able to come up with a bit more of a strategy. It will be able to kind of break down the actual intent behind the search a bit better. And then ultimately you'll be in a position where you'll get to the end of all of it and you'll be able to then start taking all of that information and translating it into an actual strategy for your directory. So what we're going to do is we're now going to switch from the O3 mini high model to GPT-4o. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, based on all of the keywords and search volume, can you recommend a site structure for my running directory website? And so what we're doing now is we've given ChatGPT all of these different keywords, and now it's going to go ahead and it's going to develop a site structure for us. So it can sometimes it goes into quite a bit of detail. So it will start off with, say, the home page, which is the main entry point. It will kind of describe what sections to include, but then it will start adding new sections based on new pages based on the keywords that it found. So for example, here, the first thing that it wants to add is a race finder page based on keywords that it found, so people looking for races. And then we can include things like distance, location, race type, by date, and so on. Then the next category that it's identified based on the keywords is a distance-based race page. So creating a unique page for every single distance that it finds. So it would have races /5K. And so then we can optimize this particular page for 5K races near me. What else has it found? So it's now found, city and province pages. And that is so that we can target keywords like Ontario Marathon, running races Toronto, Calgary marathons, those types of things. So not just are we targeting by, the distance, we're actually now really targeting city specifics as well. Then, of course, there's so much search volume for the individual race pages, especially as it leads up. So those are long tail keywords that we can target quite easily. So it also recommends adding individual race pages. What else did it find? A separate category for trail and ultra races. Now, this is something that I didn't even really think about because I'm mostly focused on road races, but it is good to know that this is a category that people search for. Then fun and specialty races, another category that I didn't even really think of, but this is what people are searching for, and this is an opportunity for us to then go ahead and just list more information in these particular categories. Then also a race calendar, another thing that people oftentimes search for, and it will actually tell you what the actual keywords are that we should target. Then a blog and training guides, it kind of looks at individual search terms that people are throwing in there that lead to more informational searches. And it's like, hey, you should create a blog and add, a couch to 5K guide and so on. So it will really look at all of the different keywords, and it will then basically recommend what pages you should create in order to target those types of keywords. Now, a key thing that I want to point you towards, and this is actually one of the main reasons why you need to do keyword research, is that the actual URL structure that is recommended is actually recommended based on the keywords that are being set up. So a lot of the times people don't even think about that part, and it's not that the actual content is missing in their directory, it's simply that they actually haven't structured their page good enough that it's easy for Google to index and therefore to rank you higher. Now, Here's the thing, we have now gotten 13 different things that we can set up inside of our directory. And now what we want to do is we need to kind of figure out what it is that we should prioritize. So the next prompt that I will add is based on all the keywords provided, what should I prioritize in the build? And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of see how we can attract, like what kind of categories will attract more search volume fast. So basically it will say, yeah, go focus on the core structure first, create the race finder page because of, you know, it has like runs near me, that kind of stuff. It targets those particular keywords. Then distance-based race pages, all that kind of stuff in here, basically gives you all of the different volumes as well. And it's basically going to outline, you know, how important each thing's going to be based on the actual search volume available to us. So we're just going to wait for this to all run down, but this is already really good. You can kind of see that, you know, just based on the search volume, there are so many opportunities for us already. It's going to basically explain how it wants us to do it, you know, what information we should include on the page. And to be honest, as I start to go through the actual directory build, I actually go even deeper into this. So I break this down into more detail. I look at the individual keywords that I want to target for each page, and then I set up my templates around that. And then we've got more, you know, mid-level or lower priority traffic things, trail races, all those kind of things. So those are the things that I would potentially add to my back pocket. You know, blog content again is something that will be good for building authority, but you know, this is something that is just not a massive priority list. I've actually kind of already done some stuff with running clubs, but you can kind of see by asking it to prioritize it based on the actual search volume of keywords, it will basically put us in a position where we can basically attract as much traffic and as fast as possible. But there is one more thing that we're going to need to look into, which is how competitive these spaces are. Now, making a plan like this is one thing, but then actually implementing it in the real world is a completely different story. Because if I just went ahead and made a plan for this on how to basically build a directory for local taxi drivers, that doesn't change the fact that Uber is still in the market and that it's going to be pretty hard for me to compete with them. So what do we want to do before we actually dive headfirst into the actual strategy? We want to dive into how competitive our space is and whether or not how competitive it currently is changes anything about what we want to do. So what you want to do is you want to go through some of your high priority keywords that you're going to be targeting, and you want to get an understanding of what is ranking well on those pages now. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to highlight our first keyword, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and make a Google search. And what you'll find is what Google currently prioritizes for certain search terms. So in this case, if I'm searching for 5K races near me, it will show you a site called Run Guides, which is a directory site as well. Then we've got the official Ottawa Race Weekend site, which is a race organizer site. Then we've got Run Guides again, and then we just keep going through. We've got Eventbrite, we've got all of these different sites. And one thing that is very important to keep in mind here is that if we end up being in a niche that is super competitive, we might need to adjust our strategy a bit. So one of the things that I recommend doing first is to actually just get a pretty good understanding of what's going on. And so what I can tell just from browsing through the first few pages is that Run Guides, the aggregator site, seems to kind of dominate everything a bit. Now, what does this mean? The first thing that we need to figure out is that, you know, how hard will it be for us to compete with them long term? I can tell you for sure, we're not going to like whip up a category, a directory overnight and then immediately compete with them. But maybe if we continue to build on different keywords, all those kind of things, maybe we could compete with them. And so one of the things that you want to look into is just how hard it is to rank for certain keywords. Now, There are a bunch of different tools that you can use for this. The first tool that I use is just simply my Chrome extension for Ahrefs. So you can see in here a little toolbar that is added, and this will basically give you insights into, how much authority a particular domain has in the eyes of Google. Without wanting to get too technical, basically the way that Google prioritizes stuff is, first of all, the quality of the content, but then it also looks at like how trustworthy is a domain as a whole. And the trustworthiness is basically determined by how many other websites recommend that domain. And so sites that have typically been around for a long time, have been in newspapers, they've been in other articles, all those kind of things, will typically have more domain authority. Now you can see exactly what the domain rating is, or the domain authority is, in the search bar. So you can see here, Run Guides has 51. Then, the Race Weekend is 52. And you can kind of just go through it. Now, I believe you can get the Chrome extension for free. I'm not sure exactly how much they will, how much information they'll give you on the free plan. I'm currently on their cheapest plan because I don't use this tool this often. I usually outsource some of my SEO stuff. But if you don't have the Chrome extension, then you can also just use their app. So they have a website where you can use their keyword explorer, and basically what you can do is just type in different keywords, and then those keywords will basically tell you how difficult it is to rank for that keyword. So here it says the difficulty score is 5, which means it's not that difficult to make the top 10. So keep in mind, it's not difficult to make the top 10, but making the top 5 might be a slightly different story. It will basically show you what the traffic potential is, and so on. If you don't want to use this tool for whatever reason, there's also another tool worth checking out called Uour Suggest, and this is also a free tool where you can basically type in the search, the key term that you're looking for, and then it will give you things like the search volume, the SEO difficulty, and a whole bunch of things like that. What I would say about this as a whole is just keep in mind that these tools are not always 100% accurate. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is just developing a rock solid strategy for competing with sites that have been around for a while. Now, there are typically a few things that I'd recommend doing if you do end up finding yourself in a situation where there are already established directories who are basically dominating the search engine results page. And that is, number one, to focus more on long tail keywords first. So if, for example, it's difficult for you to rank for terms like 5K races near me, maybe expand it a little bit more. So for example, beginner races 5K, or for example 5K in certain locations. The more you go deep into a keyword, the easier it will be for you to compete with that, because even the real big sites will find it quite difficult to basically hedge their bets all over the place. There's usually a particular focus that they'll have where they'll just spend more time and energy basically optimizing those keywords. And so the more long tail keywords you target at the beginning, the easier it will be for you to basically start dominating the ranking pages for those longer tail keywords. Again, search volume will be a little bit longer, but again, less competition will just put you in a better spot. The next thing that is just kind of key is look at the content that your competitors are basically putting out there and figure out how you can make it better. So let's just do this together right now. So like if I search for 10K races near me, let's have a look at how they structured their page. And so you can kind of see it's like a calendar, all those kind of things, and it's kind of got a little bit of a breakdown of how it all works. Think about, if this is the current user experience for people, how can I make this even better? How can I make this way more of an experience where users are just like, wow, this is phenomenal? Because that is essentially what Google will ultimately prioritize showing to people who make those searches. Then one big tip for directories is to focus on localizing your content. So if possible, create specific landing pages for the major cities in your country, because again, people are going to be searching for terms like local things near me. And if you can create a page dedicated to that specific city, the chances that you rank higher for those terms just skyrocket. So again, just a way to improve the actual content quality for those particular pages. Then another thing that works well is user-generated content, things like reviews, adding those to the site adds heaps of value, not just from an SEO perspective, but also from a trust factor perspective. Again, this might be something that might take a little bit of time to get going, but it is something that really does move the needle. Then we've also got, more dynamic content that you can put on these pages. For example, people also ask sections inside of your site. So you can add things like dynamic FAQ sections where you answer questions that people oftentimes ask in the people also ask section on the Google search engine result page. So that's a big one. But then ultimately, the way that you will move further and further up the ranking is by building backlinks. And the way that you build backlinks is honestly by building relationships with people in your niche. Simply reach out to people, tell them what you're working on, and ask if you can be featured in, say, a blog on their website, so that you can basically add a link that can be then sent back to your site. And that's essentially how your domain will start to build authority, and that will ultimately move you further up the top. Okay, so this has turned into a super in-depth guide. Now let's just recap the key things that we went over in this video. First of all, we went through the process of figuring out what it is that people are searching for. Then we went through the process of identifying how many people were searching for it. So we went and used the keyword planner to basically get the search volume and competition. Then we just looked into analyzing how much competition there is for certain types of keywords and how we can deal with it. And then we basically identified what the best keywords are that we can work with by focusing on high search volume and ideally low competition, even though sometimes that's going to be difficult. And then we basically built a strategy around those keywords to basically figure out what pages we need for our directory and how they will be set up. Now, this is something that doesn't happen once. You do this over and over and over again. So what you do is you start off with your first set of keywords, you basically build out your sites, and then you optimize it. Now, that's going to be it for this video today. This was a long one, but this is also one of the most important aspects of, setting solid foundations for your directory. So in some future videos, we're going to be talking about some other things like, analyzing competitors in a bit more depth. So if this was useful, please let me know. Also, if you enjoy these longer style videos, also let me know, because I'll make more of them. With all of that being said, thanks so much for watching the video, and I'll see you back here for the next one.